So what's going on between Japan and China? Is it really as bad as people are saying?
I was looking at the flight data this morning, and honestly, it looks like a glitch. You don't usually see 500,000 plane tickets vanish in 3 days unless a global pandemic or a massive natural disaster is occurring. But there's nothing like that happening in Japan. Yet if you walk into Kansai Airport right now, the arrival hall for flights from China is like a ghost town. We're witnessing something that we really haven't seen on this scale before. A major world power trying to delete another country as a travel destination overnight. And the most interesting part is, it's actually working. 491,000 plane tickets canceled in the span of 72 hours. That's the population of a mid-sized city, all vanishing from the departure boards of Beijing and Shanghai and Guangzhou. The World Expo in Osaka recently packed up, and Japan was bracing for a record-breaking winter tourism season. Hotels in Hokkaido were fully booked. Department stores in Ginza were stocking up on luxury goods, and then overnight the reservations disappeared. This is not a recession. It's a geopolitical heart attack triggered by fewer than 50 words spoken in the Japanese parliament. Today we're doing a deep dive into the China-Japan travel boycott. We're going to look into the specific threatening comment that started it all, the safety gaslighting campaign, and the terrifying reality of weaponized tourism. To understand why airlines are canceling 500,000 tickets, we have to parse a very specific sentence. On November 7th, 2025, newly minted Prime Minister Sanae Takaichi stood before the Budget Committee, and she was asked about a hypothetical Chinese blockade of Taiwan. Her answer was, if warships are used, that could constitute a situation threatening the survival of Japan, any way you slice it. Now, to an outsider, that sounds like standard defense speech, but in the world of East Asian diplomacy, Takaichi just walked into a room full of dynamite and lit a match. Here's the context. Japan's military action is legally restricted. They can only mobilize if Japan itself is threatened. By defining a Taiwan conflict as a survival-threatening situation, Takaichi was legally opening the door for Japanese self-defense forces to fight alongside the US to defend Taiwan. It was the most direct linkage of Taiwan's defense to Japan's survival by a prime minister since World War II. Beijing's reaction was monumental. Foreign Ministry spokesperson Mao Ning didn't just condemn it, she called it a brazen violation. But the real signal came from an unlikely place. Well, it's not so unlikely anymore. Social media. The Chinese consul general in Osaka posted a message on X that was so aggressive it shocked diplomats. Cut a dirty neck was the rhetoric coming from a diplomat. It was a signal to the Chinese public that the gloves are off. Takaichi, a known hawk and protege of the late Shinzo Abe, refused to retract her words, calling them a necessary recognition of reality. And that was when the economic response was triggered. Okay, let's be real for a second. Politicians say things all the time that upset other countries. Usually it's a slap on the wrist, a strongly worded letter, a tweet, or whatever, and we move on. But with the Prime Minister of Japan, she didn't just cross a red line, she did a cartwheel over it. By explicitly linking Taiwan's safety to Japan's survival, she basically told Beijing, if you touch them, you have to go through us. And for China, that isn't just annoying, they actually see it as a serious threat. It escalated fast. Here's what's interesting about what Beijing is doing. If they just banned travel, the World Trade Organization would come knocking. There would be sanctions, it would be messy. But if you tell your citizens, hey, we love Japan, but it's so dangerous right now, you might get mugged or discriminated against, then that is untouchable. It's what we could call safety gaslighting. They're weaponizing the anxiety of their own people. They've got Chinese people literally terrified to speak Chinese in Tokyo, thinking that they'll get attacked. It's not true, but it doesn't have to be true to kill the market. It just has to be believed. On November 14th, the Chinese embassy in Japan issued a travel advisory. But if you look closely at the wording, they did not say, we are banning travel to punish Japan. That would be a violation of the WTO rules. Instead, they said this: The atmosphere has severely deteriorated, posing significant risks to personal safety. Beware of criminal acts and discrimination. By framing the boycott as a consumer protection warning, Beijing achieves two things. One, they avoid international sanctions, and two, more importantly, they terrify their own citizens. Starting on November 15th, the social media trends shifted overnight. If you searched for Tokyo on travel apps like Ctrip or Fliggy, you got 0 results. Or worse, you got pop-ups warning you of radiation or anti-Chinese violence, claims that were fabricated or wildly exaggerated. This created a feedback loop, and Chinese social media flooded with videos of discrimination in Japan, many of which were old clips from years ago reposted as new. The narrative wasn't just Japan is bad, but it was Japan is dangerous. And that is a much harder label to peel off. Now let's talk damage. The Nomura Research Institute ran the numbers and found that a prolonged boycott of this magnitude could cost Japan an estimated 2.2 trillion yen, about 14 billion US dollars over just 1 year. But where does that money actually go? First, high-end retail. Chinese tourists account for roughly 30% of inbound spending, but they account for nearly 50% of luxury spending. Brands like Shiseido saw their stock price fall 9% in a single day. The Daigou trade, personal shoppers buying goods to resell in China, has been effectively severed. Back in China, state-owned Chinese airlines offered full refunds. This was a coordinated financial hit for them, but carriers like ANA and JAL are bleeding. They had just ramped up capacity post-Expo, hiring thousands of new staff, and now they're flying ghost planes, just empty planes, to hold on to airport slots. The hardest hit actually isn't Tokyo, it's places like Hokkaido. These regional economies built entire infrastructures, Chinese-speaking ski instructors, hot pot restaurants, direct flights specifically for this market. Some luxury shops in Ginza have been keeping the lights on almost entirely because of Chinese tourists in recent years. This is not really an exaggeration. As I said, nearly half of the luxury spending comes from that one demographic. Now you can imagine those stores, they've stocked up for Christmas and hired extra staff, and suddenly the customers just stop coming overnight. We might not just see a dip in profits. For some places like Hokkaido, this could be an extinction level event. A lot of the businesses there can survive a bad month, but they can't survive a bad year. But here's the twist. It's not 2012 anymore. The Chinese traveler in 2025 is different. They're more independent, they're more tech savvy, and they're more cynical about state media. China cannot completely control 1.4 billion people, especially the ones with money. Some sources in Tokyo have reported seeing Chinese tourists who are basically traveling undercover. They aren't posting on social media, they aren't booking big flashy tour buses. They're flying through Seoul or Hong Kong to mask where they're coming from. It's this weird cat and mouse game where the government says don't go, and the wealthy Gen Z travelers are saying, okay, we won't tell you we're going. It proves that while the government can break the tour groups, they can't kill the desire to travel. So, a lot of wealthy Chinese urbanites know that the safety warnings are political theater. Some of them are still coming to Japan, but they're keeping a low profile. They're doing stealth tourism. The numbers are maybe down 60%, not 100%. However, there's a group that cannot hide, and that's students. There are over 120,000 Chinese students in Japan. China's Ministry of Education issued a warning to them too, citing a worsening public security situation. This is the darkest shadow of the boycott. If Beijing decides to stop approving student visas, it would bankrupt dozens of Japanese private universities that rely on Chinese tuition fees to survive. That's the next lever they can pull. At the end of the day, this isn't about holidays. It's a stress test. Beijing is looking at Japan's new prime minister and asking, how much pain can you take before you fold? It's a bully tactic, pure and simple. If Takaichi apologizes, she looks weak to her voters and to the US. If she doesn't apologize, then the Japanese economy loses $14 billion. It's a lose-lose situation. And honestly, it sets a terrifying precedent. Because if this works on Japan, the 4th largest economy in the world, imagine what happens when they try this on a smaller country, like Thailand or Vietnam.
Tourism is now a weapon.
But why did this blow up now? Well, reports suggest that Takaichi is under pressure from the US to increase defense spending by 2% of GDP immediately. Her tough talk on Taiwan is a signal to Washington that Japan is a fighting ally and not just a paying ally. Another reason is that she's new in office. Beijing is testing her. They want to see if economic pain will force her to kneel. If she reacts, she looks weak at home. If she doesn't, then the economy bleeds. It's a classic dilemma. So where does this end? Well, in one scenario, it's possible that Takaichi stays quiet for a month, the news cycle moves on, and the safety advisory quietly disappears in time for Lunar New Year. Another scenario could be that Japan retaliates, perhaps by restricting visa issuance for Chinese officials, and then we enter a full-on diplomatic freeze that lasts through 2026. But for right now, we're in a standoff. If you're a traveler from Europe or America, you might find Japan surprisingly uncrowded this winter. But for the Japanese economy, the silence may become deafening. This is the reality of 21st century travel. Your vacation is a geopolitical property. If you're planning a trip to Japan soon, you're probably fine. In fact, you might enjoy the shorter lines at Disneyland. But let's not ignore the bigger picture here. We're entering an era where your ability to see the world can depend entirely on whether two politicians get along. But I want to know what you think. Would you cancel a trip if your government told you that a country was hostile or unsafe? Or would you go see for yourself? If you're in Japan right now, let me know what it's like. Are you seeing the impact from this? Do you think tourism should be used as a diplomatic weapon? Let me know in the comments. Stay safe, keep traveling. Check out my other videos below.